surgery, so I'm a little casually dressed for this call.
Sheesh. Why hip surgery? Old football
Uh,
injury or what?
yeah, exactly. Had an old football injury that's been nagging at me for a while, so I just took care of that. But doing all right.
Good. Well, good.
Cool.
Well, how far are you along on the recovery?
Three
You just
days,
have three
Tuesday.
days.
Yeah. So I'm just starting it. So, but it's all
Oh
good.
wow. Good. Well, I hope it turns out good.
Appreciate
Um,
that.
my my dad had hip surgery and it took a toll on him, but he's
Yeah.
90, so
That's why I try to do it a little bit earlier, before I hit that,
yeah.
before I hit that age. So
Well,
good.
good. Well, I appreciate you meeting with me.
Yeah, no problem.
Did Benson tell you much what I'm doing?
A little bit. I mean, I saw kind of a little bit in the email overview, but I mean, no, he didn't. He kind of just forwarded it and said, "Would you do it?" So I didn't talk to him at all about it. So
Okay. Well, let me give you an introduction. So
sure.
my name is Spencer Hackey. I'm a professor at BYU Idaho.
Okay.
I actually grew up with Benson. His younger brother is my best friend. So
Okay.
just happened to be part of the family. Um, I'm researching, I guess a quick way to put it, with today's changing world of expectations and things. I'm looking for the it factor in employability, and I'm trying to come up with, and I don't know what it is because I found a lot of good information from the interviews I'd had, but I'm looking for like how can I uh, get these students ready for the workforce in the best way that they can be the best employees, the best contributions to society, and everything. And so that's kind of my mission. I'm just
Hmm.
looking for the it factor of what are the qualities, skills that they uh, because we always have signs around campus. We graduate effective communicators, or
Mhm.
we are training the future. And I don't know what the measuring tool is, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to find out what is the what does the world and the business world need, and are we preparing the students for that? And so
Yeah,
that's kind of what I'm doing.
it's a good. I mean,
So
definitely interesting. There's a lot packed into that for sure.
oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Um, so so my design is, have you heard of Napoleon Hill?
I'm
Keys to Success. Okay. Napoleon Hill, back in the day, he did research and he interviewed uh famous people, successful people, Henry Ford, Roosevelt, and just a whole list of people, and he asked them the same questions. And so that's kind of my goal here is I'm
sure.
just going to ask the same questions with
Perfect.
everybody. I'm going to see if there's some principles that rise to the top
Perfect.
that says this is what we need.
All right.
So when you think about the best employees or coworkers you've had, answer these questions with kind of them in mind, because that's the it factor that I'm trying to find.
Gotcha.
Okay, so at the finding stage, when you think about the best people your company has hired, how were they first discovered or noticed?
Well, I mean, I think like most. I mean, they obviously applied to the role. I mean, just from a very basic standpoint, and um, and for the most part, weren't probably proactively outreach to. It wasn't like somebody that I necessarily proactively knew. It'd be somebody who applied. I will say they didn't necessarily always apply to the role that they ended up in, though.
Okay.
So sometimes somebody may apply to a particular role that um, they applied because look, they said, I got a degree in this, industry, or I have some background in this industry, but we actually through the interview process with them determined that they could actually be better maybe in a different role. And so we've moved people around before, but how they've come to us, generally speaking, has been primarily through just applying like you generally apply for a job online.
Okay.
Now we're different. We use Indeed and we check all of our stuff. We don't rely on the AI word sourcing. We're small enough where we don't have a pre-screening app that goes through and screens people out. We read every resume because our volume isn't 30,000. Our volume's 20 or 30. Um,
Sure.
so there we do screen obviously as well, but yeah, through traditional means.
Okay. So when you're sorting through all the applicants,
Mhm.
what way makes one person rise to the top before the interview stage?
Well, obviously they do have experience that matches the role, but
Mhm.
early on for us, we're primarily looking at resumes, right? And there's somewhat of a formula for them, but you'd be surprised how many people have just crazy resumes, like either resumes that are very thin on information,
Mhm.
resumes that have a lot of errors and mistakes in them, um, resumes that don't actually capture what that person's kind of capable of or their experience. And so having just I don't even mean, and again, we're a little bit unique. There's probably some employers that are going to be a little bit more strict on this, but just having your ability to have when I say like a good comprehensive resume, it's an outline of understanding of what you've done or what you're trying to do. And even if your experience is thin, it doesn't necessarily mean that we wouldn't hire you, but how are you shaping that experience? So let's say I'm a college student and I don't have
Mhm.
a lot of real work experience, but I can show that, hey, um, I was the president of this club on campus, and we were able to generate X amount of, outcome for whatever our cause was. Showcasing that. I think a lot of people go through narratives with their resumes, um, and not always quantifiable outcomes of what they've determined, and or if they do the quantifiable outcomes, um, it's not. It's not always reality. So like people's
Mhm.
resumes are naturally going to be a little bit puffed up. You're trying to say good things about yourself. But like if I see a college student, I'm just using college student as an example. It doesn't have to be a college student who's like,
Right.
I helped, this Fortune 500 company. I generated $1 billion worth of, revenue for. No, you didn't. Like you were probably on that project, and I'd be more happy if you were transparent about your role in that project than trying to, because then when you get to the interview phase and you start to push in on people, you start to realize like they actually weren't a part of some $1 billion deal at the highest level. Their real role was like, you know printing out the papers and whatever. So just,
Yeah.
you can describe your work, and I'm okay if you don't feel like you have to overinflate it so much that it's not going to be believable, because then when you get to that interview stage, it's going to fall apart pretty quickly.
Interesting. So it's just finding the good balance of, all right, you're part of this good project, but what was your part in it, and the
Right.
truthfulness of that. Okay.
Yeah, and quite honestly, explaining what you learned. If you're saying, look, in this
Mhm.
project, I was the person that really had to go get copies. But what was great about that project was I got to sit in these conversations, and one of the biggest debates that they had was this, that, or the other in terms of moving forward with a particular deal or a particular initiative. And so all those considerations I learned a lot from. And even though I wasn't the one that executed on it, I participated in those conversations and got to hear and learn and soak all that up. Like that's a winning message to me in my mind. Like because there's a proactive nature that you're showing where you're taking advantage of the situation that you're in. You're not like, oh yeah, I just get copies and that's all I do. You're saying, hey, how am I bettering myself? I have exposure to all of these different people and these environments, and here's how I've taken that, even though I didn't get to do it, and I would apply it for the go forward. So, um, yeah, I'm not sure
Yeah, that
that there.
makes sense. I like that. The proactive nature of the whole thing. I like that. So when it comes to the interview stage, are there any qualities or skills that make someone stand out during the initial hiring
So,
process beyond their
so
resume?
yeah, so it's going to seem kind of funny, maybe like skills. I don't. Skills to me are learnable, and and to some degree they're transferable. So I actually almost don't rely too heavily on skills unless you're kind of almost in like a commoditized position. You're accounting or something. I'm looking for, do you have common sense? Do you have the ability to want to work hard? And can you like disaggregate the most important things to focus your energy on? Like, do you have kind of that ability to say, how do I figure out what's going to be the biggest leverage points to move things forward? Am I inquisitive? um, and do I think that people could work well with this person? Can they win people over? Um, can they have confidence, but also not so much confidence that they are uh, tone deaf to outside input? Those types of things I'm kind of looking for in terms of that person. Not as much of like, are they proficient in a word? Like, that those types of things, or it's more about, do they have common sense? Can they work hard? Are they coachable?
Mhm.
Do they are for themselves? Are they about like their own self improvement, their own self betterment? Like, where are they trying to go? you know, it's a generic question to ask somebody what they want to do in 5 years for sure. We don't really ask that exactly, but somebody who's doesn't really know is okay. If you're saying, look, I actually not sure, but here's the skills I know I want to develop between now and then, is also a different response than like, I mean, I don't know. I just want to do this for now and then figure something out versus somebody who's like, I know that in 5 years I want to be this, 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 and this. All three of those responses say something different about that particular candidate, regardless of
Yeah.
what they actually want to do. And so those are more of the qualities that I'm generally looking for. So a lot of times I'll put somebody on something that they're maybe that this is actually a good example, Benson, right? You look at all these
Yeah.
portfolio companies, none of our CEOs of these portfolio companies have backgrounds in pretty much anything we're running. They basically said, is there somebody that's common sense, that's got some self-motivation, that's going to be a self-starter that can go in and figure it out, that's got some capabilities. It wasn't necessarily explicit that like, I don't know how, let's say we have a Morning Dew Tropical, which is a tropical plant brokerage. Like Dason, who runs that, he didn't know anything about plants. He had to go in and learn that, but Dason's got the skill set where he's a go-getter. He's going to try to get in there to learn things. He's got common sense, hard worker, self-reflective, all those other skills,
Sure.
or traits, I guess I'd call them maybe.
Hmm. Oh, that makes total sense. And so just to summarize, because you mentioned, all right, the skills, they're learnable.
Yeah,
So you mostly touched on the soft skills.
yeah,
Okay. And I teach this in at the university, and so I love to hear that because a lot of times, well, I'll just paint this picture. Like if students are struggling in school, it's not that they don't know how to read or write and stuff. It's usually that they can't find the motivation,
right.
or they're just not organized. And and if I could teach them to be organized, be self-starters, motivation, work hard, then all of a sudden the reading and the writing
Yeah,
and all that
right.
stuff works.
Exactly. Those things are just symptoms of
Yeah.
the other components. Like it can be
Mhm.
learned if you have the motivation to learn. It's the symptom is like how the cause. It's like trying to figure out like how do you is that person wired the right way? How do you get them to fix the cause versus, again, you said motivation. It's like how do you unlock that motivation? I'm not saying this is true for everybody, but for the most part, if you can unlock the motivation, the skills then add on. Can add on pretty quickly. And I think it's probably interesting for you because the workforce obviously is changing rapidly, and I don't think everybody thinks AI is a solution for everything. It's not as of right now, but again, it's commoditizing a lot of industries. So the skills, in air quotes, I'm not saying they're less important, but they're going to look a lot different. I mean, I think between law clerks, and even like small clinics. There's all these different industries, some financial industries where now I can just go in and chat marketing agencies. I can go ahead and like do my own prompts. That it actually is the skill in some sense. Is like it's gonna spit out for me what I need. The question is like from an implementation standpoint, from a I guess those soft skill standpoints, that to me, a big picture, like big world global, it's what's going to ultimately distinguish humans from AI is those soft skills in a different way. And so like I think your ability to really refine those is actually going to make you valuable in the workforce.
Okay. Well, if you have two candidates side
Mm.
by side, what makes one person rise to the top and the other than the other one? Is there anything
But I mean,
like
it's a little hard with the hypothetical on that, but
yeah,
um, if everything was equal on a resume, let's say the
yeah,
exact equal resumes, then it's going to be about like what was their presence? Like did they have a little bit of charisma? Did they win me over? And what was that interaction like? Was it here's an example, for instance, there was this was for a project. We were hiring these couple people to do this project for us, and we were gonna have them. We ended up hiring them all because that was kind of the desire. But in the process, the skill sets were all even between these three people. Two of them understood what we were trying to do and clearly understood it, and the third person did not understand what we were trying to do. And it was clear every time they spoke that like even though they had the resume, there was a block. There was some miscommunication, some ability either in the way that we were communicating and that person was receiving it that was problematic. It was a challenge and that was a symptom of something that I think would be an on or a foreshadow of something that would be an ongoing communications issue with this person for the go forward. So I think again, it's going to be a lot of those soft skills. It's going to be like, did they win me over, or could they win somebody over? Even if they didn't win me over, do they understand and do they have the listening skills as well? You know, their ability to repeat back, and not like verbatim, but to be like really engaged in what we're discussing, having some level of enthusiasm behind it. I mean, almost every employer will tell you, like, Indeed or wherever people are applying now is so funny because people just apply to stuff, they don't even know what they applied to. They'll get an
Right.
interview set and they're like, I forgot I even, or they don't respond. Like you set an interview, they applied to a role, you send them an interview request and they just go disappear because the fast application components of now all these systems mean somebody could sit there for an hour and just shoot off 20 resumes to different people. They don't even know what they applied for. So your ability,
Yeah.
having knowledge about the actual role, engaging in it, having done some research for what we actually do, asking some good questions. So like, I mean, I'd say questions maybe is one. I mean, I know it's a kind of a
Oh,
old school test, but it's like if somebody's actually done the research on the business itself and the role and has questions, it shows to me they actually are interested in the role. Like they're not interested in the check. There's a genuine interest in like trying to understand the business, which I think that curiosity is a really important role. Otherwise, you know, if people just say, no, I think I'm good, I'm going, how could you possibly be good? Do you have any questions? No, I think you answered them all. How?
yeah.
Like, you because again, even if you knew from a technical standpoint all the aspects of a role, I'd want the curiosity from that person to be really thinking about. I want that person to say, well, where do you think this role would be in 5 years? Where could you see this going? Do you see this? Like they should be thinking about their own future, even in that role. And a lot of times I don't get that. So if somebody's doing that, I think that definitely is like, it shows me there's like a different level of not just caring about the role, but their own professional development. Like where do they want to go? They're thinking about it. There's a curious, not just like, I need a job, give me a job. I graduated, but they actually are trying to build their own career and decide whether or not the role is right for them.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's very important. Um, so when it comes to are there any warning signs or gaps that make you hesitant to hire someone, even if they appear qualified on paper?
Sure. I mean, I know these are all like, I feel like these are kind of time tested in some ways. Like they've been around
Yeah.
for a while, so they're not necessarily revolutionary. But you know how many times I've been on a call where either somebody left an employer or had a gap, and they're not that I don't want people to be transparent, but their ability to delicately talk about the relationship with their previous employer or previous manager or whatever it is comes up a lot where somebody's just really puts the business out in the street of the previous company or the previous manager or what happened in the specifics. I think there's like in some ways that we're asking them, right? So they're being specific, but in some ways that, there's probably a more graceful way that I see people a lot of times not undertake in terms of like answering questions about previous work. Like people will like just kind of talk trash about their previous managers or some job, before. Like you go, okay, like, yeah, it's okay if you said that it probably wasn't the best fit. My vision was different than this, and you handle it level. There's some level of like kind of politicking that you're doing in the way you're articulating it. But the immaturity that I see sometimes in the way that people say it, it just goes, okay, well, that's how you'd speak about it to somebody else if it wasn't working for you here. Do you have that ability to kind of talk about something even that's been a problem for you in the past, maybe it didn't work out, but in a way that's not going to frame you, make you look bad.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, that makes sense. Um, so after somebody's hired, uh, what qualities or behaviors help them become a strong long-term fit for your company?
Well, sometimes you can see right out of the gate. Sometimes somebody like in the first week, you're going to figure it out whether it's actually going to work or not because either they showed up late on the first day or they called you that day and said, actually, I got to start the next day. Little things like that are going to tell me it's not going to probably work for the long run. If their first questions a lot of times, not that these aren't important, but their first questions are around like time off or benefits, all this other stuff, like not in the interview, but once they're hired and that's where the focus is, you know, there's some questions, right? Or I got to call out, I'm calling out sick, or I'm going to be late this day because I got to take my kid to school or whatever. And again, not that we're not flexible. we would be. But I think early on when you're starting something, there's a there's a level of commitment that you're expected to probably have, at least in those first couple of weeks, that if out of the gate you're already showing problems with your schedule, problems with whatever, then it's going to be probably a long-term indicator. It's not going to be something that's going to work super well. Having said that, though, like similarly, there's people that jump right in that you think are going to be great, that win people over, and you know when it's actually time to deliver, they're not that good. So I don't know if there's anything. eh, I would say that from a person who is, I would say that there are some negative indicators that something may not work, but I would say
Okay.
that the positive indicators don't necessarily mean that it's going to work either.
Sure.
That makes sense?
It's kind of a longer fit. I get that.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so from your experience, are there any skills or characteristics that separate employees who simply perform their job from those that just become strong candidates for promotion?
Yeah, I don't think it's something that's on paper, right? I think that that's just like that's just innate in the employee, right? They have a desire to want to do good for the sake of doing good. They want to have a good work product because they have pride in that work product. It's not because it's 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock and the time clock's punched out. It's like they want to win, and it's not, and they want that to be a reflection of themselves in some ways, is whatever the output is. And so it's not like an external necessarily skill that needs to be developed. It's that if they don't have the desire to do that, then they're probably in the wrong role. And it doesn't mean that like the role that they're in is their role for life, but it's like if they had a desire to want to get to a next, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say somebody wants to, um, well, look at like a franchise opportunity, for example. Somebody wants to ultimately own a fast food restaurant, and their first job is just being the janitor, right? You're doing the mopping the floors or whatever. If your actually desire is to be that franchisee one day, then you're gonna like really take that mopping job seriously, because you're gonna want to be like, okay, I want to learn all the ins and outs of like what it takes to maintain, what are the hours it's gonna take, what are the costs of the bleach that I have to buy, and whatever. Start to really use that for your own advantage for what your goals are, right? So like in that instance, if it stops at your time stops at 3 o'clock and you're supposed to go home, you're not necessarily going to want to go home if you're actually truly interested in figuring out something associated with that role, because it's going to lead you to this bigger goal of yours. So like I think that it's not necessarily like a hard skill set. It's something that's innate in the person, that they actually, it's not a job, I guess, and maybe it's not even a career. It's a reflection of themselves in terms of what they're trying to get out of something. um, um
I love that. Well, because it's if I get this right, it's even if it's a mundane task, you're going to do that the best you can,
right.
and because that's going to help you out. Not well, not only now, but it's going to help you where you want to be in the future, and it's
No,
just who
it's
you
like
are, reflection of
it's like
themselves.
Yeah, and again, I'm not to put it's not putting myself in this category saying that I'm perfect or anything. But like
Right.
for example, I'm doing this thing. We're in private equity, and I'm like I've learned stuff, but I don't really know stuff. So at home, like my literature now is like trying to learn books and read books about it, so I understand it more. Like I don't just go like, okay, I'm off and I'm done. I want to keep on learning. Somebody who's like, and hopefully that's a good indication. It's like somebody who is, again, you're the janitor at the fast food restaurant that you're trying to go to. You're like genuinely interested with trying to learn more. So it's not really about your wages. It's not necessarily about the hours that you work. It's not necessarily about your manager. You're actually doing whatever you're doing because you're trying to improve yourself and get to a particular place. And so, those indications you can see, I think, in somebody pretty quickly. Like, or look, maybe it's not about growth. It's just about being satisfied and winning within the role that you have, to be like, I just want to put my best foot forward. I really want to make sure that the draft that I did of my press release or whatever is perfect. And I didn't just get it out the door so I could get out as quickly as possible. Like I really want to make it good, and I'm researching other ways to make it good, or whatever. But I think it's more about a reflection of their desire to be good than it is any like one skill set.
I love that, man. So when it comes to time where you're like, all right, I want to keep this guy on the team, I'll give him a promotion, let's give him some extra money. Are there any qualities, behaviors, or skills, or I should say, are there any qualities, behaviors, or skill gaps that prevent people from being promoted, even when they're technically good at their job?
Interpersonal relationships with people in the office. You
Okay.
know, if and again, I don't know if that counts as being good at your job, but I'd say like if people have a big problem with this person, hesitation creates an issue. I mean, if you have a person on your team that like maybe they're really good as an individual team player, but they alienate a lot of people, it's got to be you got to be careful with that because you reward that person and that people could be really pissed. Wait, that guy's such a jerk. Why is he? Well, you got it's all about the culture of the company that you're trying to create,
Yeah.
I think. But I think interpersonal relationships become pretty important. Those could be impediments. Um, if you're doing all things else equally, hopefully it's not, but that could be one where you know there's trust issues or whatever it may be in terms of um, you know or interpersonal relationship issues.
Hmm. Interesting. And I agree 100%. Um, so when you think about the best people that you've worked with or that are successful in your organization, what are qualities, skills, characteristics did they consistently demonstrate?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like your very first question. It's like they just kind of get it. I know you're trying to find that it factor, but it's like
Right.
again, they have common sense. They're self-motivated. They're curious. They work well with other people. They can kind of play any role. They're not super rigid either, where it's like this is what I do. It's don't whatever's on my job description is the only job I do. They're not like that. They're like, how do I? Yeah, I can help out here. I can help out there. Like they're collaborative in their nature or their spirit, even if their role doesn't require it. Again, are they able to delineate like the highest threshold issues? Um, you know, do they have good interpersonal skills?
Mm.
And everything else, I think, falls behind all that stuff.
Basically, they're just the best, being the best self that they can be, and across the way. Um, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, ultimately at BYU Idaho, we are trying to build disciples of Jesus Christ. And it's
Mm.
kind of like, all right, we've got to implement that into yourself because I think Jesus Christ had common sense. He was self-motivated. He played the role. And so I guess in a lot of ways the it factor is that, and from what I'm hearing.
It's you, right? It's
Yeah.
you. And I think like the maybe the last thing I'd say on this is like um, you have a lot of every individual has their own value. And how that
Yeah.
value gets extrapolated, that can come from a lot of different ways. It can come from a good manager, it could come from a coach, it could come from yourself. But from the economics of it, it's like, there's all these arguments about trillionaires and billionaires and capital, whatever. It's really about like what value can you provide and how many other people can provide that value. Again, mopping the floors is something a lot of people can do. Anybody can do that for the most part.
Right.
What skill set do you have? What's unique about yourself that nobody else can do? Or what makes you different? What separates? What value can you bring as an individual and who you are that to bring something to a team or to an entity? Not to necessarily be a trillionaire or whatever, but the point is like that's not that's unique to you. So your own self-development as you as a person actually ends up being what your competitive advantage ultimately is. Like because that ultimately is your distinction of value. So again, if you're an engineer and you're like a brilliant engineer and you're throwing all yourself into becoming the best engineer possible, there's going to be value in your skills as an engineer that maybe other people can't compete with because that's actually how your brain's wired. I
Right.
don't know if that makes a ton of sense, but I think like um, your own self development and who you want to be and who you are, and really refining those things from a soft skill set to some hard skill sets around that stuff, ultimately dictate everything else. I think everything else is just kind of like the window dressing on what's behind that person.
Yeah. I agree because I love your analogy of mopping floors because you think that's the lowest standard you can get. But how you mop the floors and the attitude and everything kind of reflects on your true character. Okay. Well, I've got one more question for you, and then I'll let you go. If you were to advise your younger self, 17-year-old, 18, something like that, who wants to be hired, wants to succeed, wants to be promoted, wants to find that success, what would you tell yourself to develop first, and why?
I mean, obviously it depends on the role. Um, it's tough. It's a tough question because so much of this you learn from experience that you couldn't even necessarily tell yourself back then or really have a realistic expectation to prepare yourself for all the things you may encounter along the way. It's just how it goes. You're gonna, we encounter stuff next week. So I would say like, man, I don't know. That's a pretty heavy question.
It is
Um,
heavy.
I think I think vulnerability is good. I
Mm,
think your ability to be like not feel like you need to know everything or to be, especially when you're young, your first out of college, you don't know everything. So don't be more open to asking questions. Don't feel like you have to have insecurity aspects to certain things because of you don't want to show anybody weakness, right? Like it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to not know everything. Um, and if somebody's not going to answer the questions for you, it's probably not a great role. Like it's got not a good relationship. So like, don't feel like you have to. Um, yeah, I guess that's one. I'd also say don't get distracted with like what's shiny too. Like the everybody wants a certain salary or certain I should be able to put this in my LinkedIn profile or there's so much garbage and all that like and it shakes out pretty quickly. I play college sports, right? And one thing I missed when I got into the workforce is the box score because the box score was great because it's going to show you at the end of the day what the actual stats were. I had 2 tackles, I had 5 tackles, I had 10 tackles, I had 0 tackles, I had a fumble. They're going to show what my stats were at some level.
mhm,
When you get into the workforce, people can just say a lot of stuff. I mean, you go on LinkedIn, everybody's the CEO of something, their own company, and so when you went into the workforce, it doesn't necessarily happen that way. There's not like this arbiter, there's a referee that says, actually, statistically on paper, you're better than this other person. People can sell a lot of BS in the regular space, and you could feel like, oh, I have to do what they're doing, or I need to be, you know, CEO and be making this much or whatever. And people are a lot of times looking at others. And I think like not getting distracted by that, like focus on, not the shiny object, but like, what's actually important from a skill set development, right? And be okay being able to take something that maybe isn't ideal out of the gate that's going to get you some skills that's going to ultimately get you where you want to go from an ideal standpoint too. Like don't feel I think out of college there's a lot of pressure, there's a lot of peer pressure about what everybody else is doing in terms
mhm.
of like how good their job is or how much they get paid. Like worry about skill development early on. You know.
I like that. I like that a lot. Oh, well, I appreciate this.
No, no problem.
It works out really well. Um, now, you played for who was it?
UC Davis.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm.
Were you a defensive end there, or what
I
were you?
was I was a defensive end. Yeah.
That's awesome. My brother played defensive end, and he said it was the best one. I played cornerback,
Oh,
and
nice,
so, um,
nice.
but but I was only in high school because they're
Yeah,
like, all right. But it's fun. I love the sport.
that was great. So now I'm just rehabbing from it. So, but,
I know.
but
I know. I feel it too. I probably tackled with my head more than I should have, and so I've
yeah,
had some
yeah,
neck
no,
issues
later
too.
on, yeah, for sure. Cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, good.
Well, Jake, thank you
Cool.
so much.
Thank you. If there's anything
I
else you need
appreciate that.
too.
I may.
Okay.
Ultimately, my goal is to interview 100 people,
Okay.
so that the best stuff kind of rises to the top. Um, so if I reach out to you, do you know of anybody that I could talk to that does kind of this stuff too?
Yeah, let me give it some thought. I'll try to come up with a
Okay.
with a few folks. So
Okay. Well, I'll
cool.
reach back out to you. It
All
might
right.
be in a week or so because I'm
That's
going on
perfect.
vacation,
That's
but
good. I'll be more
okay.
with it by then. So
Yeah.
yeah.
You're off the painkillers, right?
All right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So cool.
This is great. Well, this is good information, Jake, and I
Perfect.
appreciate it. And
No
say
problem.
hi to Benson for me if
I
you
will do
think
that.
about it.
All right.
Okay. Thank
Take
you.
care, sir.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.